Booktube, and my name is Elizabeth. Welcome back to my channel, Bookish and Books. In this video, I will do a TBR check-in for the month of March, talk about the books that I read at the end of March, because I've already talked about other books before, and perhaps comment a little bit on the results of the Booktube Prize, because we heard the results on Friday, April 1, so there are a few surprises there. TBR check-in, let's start with that. In March, I read a whole bunch of books, but most of them came from the library. So that means that I read 6 books from my TBR, which is not bad, but I bought 7 books. So that is a difference of +1, and that brings the TBR to 146. Yeah, it's not going down, it's going up. That's life. I don't care. So at the end of March, perhaps beginning of March. At the beginning of March, I read quite a few mysteries because it was March Mystery Madness. And I thought I would read more mysteries when I did the mid-month wrap-up or something like that. I said that I would do a separate wrap-up for March Mystery Madness, which I'm going to do. I'm going to do a separate wrap-up. But I thought I would read more mysteries, and at the end of the month, I did not, because I received a whole bunch of books from the library that I had put on hold. So I decided to read a few of them. Unfortunately, 1 or 2 will have to go back without being read. It's life. So I ended the month of March in nonfiction. One book that I finished is Azar, Nafisi, Read Dangerously. I said in the previous video that I was not really getting hooked by this book because it talks about books that I haven't read. And it remained more or less like that until the end. The 4th letter, so the 4th chapter, I guess, is about a book that I've read. It's about Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. So I guess for that reason, it's the chapter I preferred. So the 4th chapter was more interesting. And the 5th chapter was interesting too. It was about racism, Black Lives Matters, and the murder of George Floyd, and linking that to books about racism, such as James Baldwin's works, and I'm not going to say his name, last name Coates, first name Ta-Nehisi Coates. I think that's how it's pronounced. I don't know. So these 2 authors who write about race and race relations in the United States. So the last 2 chapters were interesting. The previous ones could have been interesting too, but I found them less interesting because I had not read them. So that's a book that was just, in the end, just okay. Nothing extraordinary, but if you like the books that are being talked about in it, you would probably be very interested by it. Another book that I read, no, I'm going to keep that one for last. I finished my Mammoth. I'm very proud of that. I finished by Beethoven, and I'm going to do a separate review of this book because I think I spent so much time reading it, it deserves its own video. Now it's going to be clicked on by perhaps 20 people only, but I don't care. I spent a lot of time with this book, so it deserves a video of its own. So stay tuned. And then the last book that I finished, well, it's not the last book that I finished, but it's the last one I want to talk about. It is All That She Carried, The Journey of Ashley's Sack of Black Family Keepsakes by Tiya Miles. This book was on the long list, one of the final 48 for the Booktube Prize, and I thought it was finals material, at least semi-finals material. And it did not make it through to the 2nd round, and I'm flabbergasted that it did not go through. This book is awesome. I really loved it. It is about a sack, a cloth bag that has an embroidery on it, and the message that is embroidered on it is, my great-grandmother Rose gave this sack to her daughter Ashley. I'm trying to quote from memory. I should not try to do that. I don't know it by heart. Let me find the quote. It says that this sack was given by Rose to her daughter Ashley when she was sold in South Carolina at age 9. It contained a tattered dress, 3 handfuls of pecans, a braid of Rose's hair, and Rose told her it'd be filled with my love always. And they never saw each other again, and it is signed Ruth Middleton, 1921. So this embroidery was put on the sack by a descendant of Rose and Ashley. And what Tiya Miles does is that she tries to find out who Rose and Ashley were, what their lives were. And she also examines what was the importance of the objects put in the sack. What was the importance of the sack itself? First thing first, having a sack is already something. And then what's the importance of a tattered dress, of a handful of nuts, of a braid of hair? And she explores all of this, and I thought it was great. It is not strictly narrative, so I could understand that for some readers of the Booktube Prize, not that for some readers this may be perhaps a fault, but I don't think it was. And also it asks a lot of questions, and there's almost as many questions as there are answers in this book, and I thought it was one aspect that was great, so perhaps it played against it. But I am completely, totally flabbergasted that it did not make it through to the second round. Now, my thoughts about the Booktube Prize, the nonfiction division, because it's the only one I'm judging, so that's the only one that I'm sort of paying attention to. I was not a judge for the first round. I will be for the second round. I will be judging Group D, in case you're curious. So for this first round, what I did was that I read books that were part of the 48, thinking, but not necessarily thinking, but books that interested me and perhaps thinking that they would make it through and that it would save me some time at some point. And so in total, I read 6 books of the 48. I'm including in that 2 books that I had read before the first round began. So a book that I read last year, which was The Case of the Infamous Dr. Cream, The Murderous Dr. Cream by Dean Job, which is about a serial killer in the 19th century. The Sinner and the Saint by Kevin Birmingham, which is about Dostoevsky writing Crime and Punishment. So these 2 I had read before the Booktube Prize began, and then during February and March I read books from groups here and there. I read The Doctor's Blackwell by Patricia, was it Patricia? By something Nimura, and then I read Notes on Grief by Adichie. If there are too many syllables, I will forget the name. And then I also read These Precious Days by Anne Patchett, and finally this book, All That She Carried. And of all these books, of these 6 books, I thought there were 2 that basically had no chance of going through. That was Notes on Grief, because it's just a short essay. It's not a book. It doesn't weigh enough compared to the other books. So that was obvious it would make it through. And the other one that I didn't think would make it through would be The Sinner and the Saint, because I thought it was too on a subject perhaps too precise, because if you haven't read Crime and Punishment, I was wondering how interesting it would really be for somebody who has not read Crime and Punishment. But so far I've seen 2 videos of judges for that group, and the 2 had not read Crime and Punishment as far as I know, and both of them liked the book very much. So that's not the reason it did not make it through, at least for these 2 judges. And then the others, some I thought would make it through, and some I thought probably would make it through, I think. I was sure The Doctor's Blackwell would make it through. It did make it through. It is the only one of the 6 books that I read that made it to the second round. All the others were eliminated before. Anne Patchett, These Precious Days, it's a collection of essays. I thought they were very good. Of course, I don't know the quality of the books that it was against. I don't know that the books in the other books in the group, they probably were stronger, I guess. But I know that also that the collection of essays, perhaps some of them are less interesting than others, and perhaps the less interesting ones can weigh more than the interesting ones. So perhaps that played against it. I don't know. So that one was eliminated. And then the Dr. Cream, it's true crime, so I thought perhaps there's a bit of ickiness in there. People don't really like reading about it, so I'm a bit surprised it did not make it through, but at the same time it's not flabbergasting. But this one, I'm completely flabbergasted. So I don't remember what were the other books in the group. I know it was against Empire of Pain, so it's obvious that Empire of Pain would make it through. But the other 2 books that made it to the second round and that bumped this one, I don't know what they are. But I'm just completely, totally surprised that this did not make it through. I'm surprised. And then in the other divisions, fiction and translated fiction, I did not really pay that close attention to it, but I remember that when the results were revealed, I was surprised that some of the big names did not make it through. In translation, I was surprised that Vargas Llosa did not make it to the second round. Maybe it's just because I know the name. I don't know the book. I haven't read it, but I was a bit surprised that It did not make it to the second round, but I think the fiction and translation division is a very strong division, and that there are many great books in that division. And in the fiction division, this one I remember less. This one I paid a bit less attention. The only book that I had read of the entire 48 book field was No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood, and it did not make it to the second round. I'm not surprised, because it's really a hit or miss book, and yeah, it's probably a miss more than a hit for many people. So I'm going to keep watching videos of people ranking their books, of all the judges ranking their books, regardless of division. I find it super interesting. I love the Booktube Prize. And as I said, I'm judging Group D, and I've already started reading one of the books. So I don't know what my future videos will look like, because so far there's a good chance that for the first few weeks of April I will not be allowed to talk about the books that I'm reading. So yeah, I'll see what I'll do. I'll do a bunch of tags, I guess. So that is it for this sort of kind of wrap up for the end of March. I will do a separate video for March Mystery Madness. Not that I read a ton of mysteries, but I think it's nice to group them. And that is it for me. Thank you everyone for watching. I will see you in the next video. À la prochaine!